Hey RACER fans, Happy New Year. This is our quick look back at 2015, and we're going to start out in January last year at the Chili Bowl. With Rico Abreu winning the Chili Bowl, the guy that Kyle Larson, one of his best friends, predicted a couple years ago, keep your eye on this kid. He's going to go places. Well, he is. He's already in NASCAR, unfortunately for us open wheel fans. The only time we get to see him is at the Chili Bowl, or maybe an outlaw race, a sprint car race, if he's still allowed to do that. But Rico's got one of the biggest fan followings in the country, well deserved. Keep your eye on him, he's going to be tough. The first IndyCar highlight for me came at Long Beach. That's when Connor Daly was having breakfast with Dario Franchitti Saturday morning after the first practice was over on Friday. Got a phone call from Dale Coyne, you got your helmet here, yep. Kid jumps in a car, no hot laps, goes out and practices for 10 minutes, qualifies, runs the race, has the second fastest lap of a Honda driver during the race, and completely dazzles people because this is what this kid, his forte is road racing. That's what he did in Europe so well. And it's the first time he'd ever got a chance to be in an IndyCar in a road course setting, a street setting. Did a hell of a job. Should have probably been hired on the spot. Would have been 20 years ago because it's so impressive. The good news is it took a while, but Dale Coyne finally came to his senses thanks to the Bird family. He's got Connor in his car for 2016 full time. The next highlight, Joseph Newgarden. Wins his first race at Birmingham, Alabama. And believe it or not, he should have won a couple races the year before. He won 2 races this year for Sarah Fisher, Wayne Cartman, and Ed Carpenter. Probably should have won 4 with a little bit of pit work. No surprise, the kid's been fast. He's the future of IndyCar racing. He's great with the media, great with the fans, charismatic as hell, and a really good race driver who, if Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi are paying attention, will be on their payroll sooner than later. Then we go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. James Hinchcliffe almost loses his life. He's practicing the day after qualifying, going to turn 3. The suspension breaks, pounds the wall. Thankfully, Mike Yates and the Macho safety team got there on the spot, realized the situation. James is bleeding to death. They get him out of the car, and then Dr. Stevens and Dr. Pullman take over, and the people at Methodist Hospital. And between that unified group, they saved Hinch's life on the racetrack, just like Alex Zanardi was saved in 2001 at Germany by Terry Trammell, Steve Albee, Len Bromley, and the kart safety team. It's unparalleled that IndyCar and kart open wheel racing has had the best safety team for the last 40 years, 30 years, and they proved it again in May. And we're happy to report Hinch has made a full recovery, and he'll be racing in 2016 thanks to all those good people. The race itself, another classic. Juan Montoya and Will Power, teammates for Roger Penske, battling to the end. Montoya makes a great pass, wins his second Indy 500. He's almost 40 years old. No signs of slowing down. Power drove a hell of a race too. The fans on their feet the last 15 laps like they've been the last 5 years. The next big highlight pretty much should crystallize what IndyCar racing is and what Formula One and what NASCAR can't be. The race at Fontana was a 500-mile thrill show. It was everything you could ever imagine. Fabulous passes, yeah, a few crashes. People watched the race like this. 80 passes among 14 drivers before Graham Rahal finally wins at the end. And you heard some comments from some of the drivers that were a little upset because the racing was too close and was too dangerous. Well, it's like AJ Foyt said in the interview. That's the way racing used to be. And guess what? People loved watching it. Our NBC Sports Network rating for the last half hour of that race was 1 million people. And for a Saturday afternoon, that's unbelievable, unheard of. And we've got to give a tip of that to the NASCAR drivers who were tweeting during that last hour of the race. You got to watch this. This is the greatest thing we've ever seen. It's the showcase for IndyCar. They should have made a 30-second commercial after that race and shown it the rest of the year and said, you think restrictor plate racing's good? Watch this. This is real racing at 215 miles an hour, side by side, dicing, slicing. Graham Rahal spent the whole week doing interviews. It was the most popular thing that's happened in IndyCar racing probably for 2 or 3 years because it was so unlike any other kind of racing can be at those speeds. And unfortunately, Fontana won't be back next year to duplicate that. So the next highlight for me was watching Sage Karam develop. He should have been on the pole at Detroit in the rain doing a hell of a job, and they for some reason they throw out the red flag and they cancel qualifying after it's half done. So then he finally gets his first top 5 at Fontana, finishes 5th, gets his first podium Iowa, finishes 3rd, and he's 20 years old. Sure, he made some mistakes, but the kid showed he had a lot of talent, a lot of promise, a lot of aggression, and made a lot of fans after that Iowa race, except for Ed Carpenter. So we go from there. Mid-Ohio is the next big highlight. Why is it a highlight? Because Graham Rahal wins the 2nd race of the year, thrusts him back in the point championship. It goes to 2nd place, and this is after Chevrolet's kicked their butt all year, and suddenly Honda's got a player in the championship. Graham had a resurgence all year, drove like we knew he could, had some fabulous runs. The Ray Hall team, hats off to them. They carried the Honda flag and did a great job. The great thing about Mid-Ohio was the battle between Graham and his buddy Justin Wilson to the end, and of course Justin standing on the podium with Graham's a picture we're always going to have in our memory. Then we end up going to Sonoma, and that's where the championship's going to be decided. Montoya's led the whole season. Scott Dixon qualifies 9th, Montoya qualifies 5th, so it looks like it's pretty much a game, set, match. Montoya hadn't made a mistake all year, has driven great, but he makes an uncharacteristic mistake early in the race, falls back. Dixon charges through the field, gets great help from his teammates. Charlie Kimball finishes 3rd, Tony Kanaan finishes 4th. Montoya charges back to 6th, but he loses the championship. Scott Dixon wins his 4th championship. Is he one of the great race drivers of all time? Well, he's one of the great IndyCar drivers of all time. There's no doubt about that. So, you just look at that season what Chevrolet had. They won 12 out of 16 races. They led 80% of the laps. They won every pole position. And Honda went to IndyCar and asked for some relief on the Aero Kit package, so we're going to see what happens in 2016. But so far, General Motors has been kicking their butt. Now, in 2015, of course, we had some tragedy. Kevin Swindell, one of the best race drivers in the country, Sammy Swindell's son, gets paralyzed in a sprint car crash during a heat race in the Knoxville Nationals. He's paralyzed from the waist down. The good news is, not only is his therapy and his rehab going good, and he's probably going to race again, I think he's going to walk again because the kid's so determined. He's young, he's strong, and he's getting the best help and doing a hell of a job making a comeback. We also lost Tony Elliott, one of the best short track sprint car drivers in Indiana history. Won all kinds of races and championships in the 90s and in the 80s. Died in a plane crash in November. Then we got Tony Adamowicz, great Formula 5000 sports car driver, fabulous character, should have made the Indy 500 one year, got hosed by the USAC timing and scoring team. He's got brain cancer and he's fighting for his life, so we're all pulling for Tony. And of course, the biggest loss in the IndyCar community was Justin Wilson. What else can you say? The guy didn't have an enemy. He was a fabulous race driver. Only really had a great ride one year for Newman Haas. If he'd ever driven for Penske or Ganassi or Andretti, he'd probably won the championship. I just think the best tribute we can pay to him is that I just want to remember that smile and that laugh, because there was few people as gracious and as good as Justin Wilson was. Now, as we look to 2016, what have we got to look forward to? Well, Connor Daly's in a full-time ride. We got to get Sage Karam a full-time ride. What I don't like, we still got double points at Indy and Sonoma. It's a bogus way to win a championship. IndyCar doesn't need that. It bothers me we're not going back to Milwaukee. It's too bad we're not going back to Fontana. And I wish the season was longer, but maybe something good will happen here in the next couple of years and we'll start running into November. I hope that happens. Bottom line, though, the best thing about 2015, Anthony Joseph Voigt Jr., not only did he turn 80 last January, then he made it all the way to the end of the year, because in middle of January last year, he's on a ventilator for 10 days. He gets infection. He almost dies. He's in and out of the hospital for 6 months, but I talked to him a couple days ago. He's thrown his walker away. He's walking again. He's eating the steaks raw. I don't know if he's eating Bluebell ice cream yet or not, but it's just great to hear his voice on the phone and to know that AJ joined Dan Gurney, Parnelli Jones, Joe Leonard, Jim McElreath, and Uncle Bobby in the Over 80 Club. These are the guys who are the reason I really fell for auto racing, and it's just good to hear their voice and know they're still alive and kicking as we go to 2016. So thanks for watching RACER.com and reading this year. Marshall Pruitt did a hell of a job. We think it's a place to watch IndyCar racing and to read about it. We hope you keep doing it. This is Robin Miller. Talk to you next week.